Hi, this is Dave Neff. I'm with the Visioning Committee, Fairfield City Council. Our group has been together for the last, I'm going to say 8 to 10 weeks, and a process that we are calling Visioning for Fairfield. The funding for this comes from the Living Roadway Trust Fund of the Iowa Department of Transportation. Their overall funding comes from the national transportation area. And our opportunity is, and what we'd like to share with you at this time, is a vision for Fairfield. What can we do to help as we have a bypass that goes around Fairfield? How can we make it user-friendly? How can we welcome people to our community? And at the same time, do some other upgrades and make pedestrian traffic and people more excited about using our highways as they come into the city. Our process has been going along. We've had the good fortune, I'll introduce you to Mark Pingenot very shortly here from Trees Forever. We've also had people from Shive-Hattery, and they're a firm in the Cedar Rapids area. We also have had 2 interns from Iowa State University in landscape architecture. And so besides a local audience, cross-section of our community of volunteers, we have 4 professionals that are helping us prepare these. What we'd like to share with you at this time is where we've been and where we'd like to go for the future of Fairfield. This time I'd like you to meet Mark Pingenot, and he's from the Vinton, Iowa area and represents Trees Forever. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. As Dave indicated, this community visioning process wouldn't be possible in the community without the facilitation of Trees Forever through our Iowa's Living Roadways program. And it's through this program that we hope to assist communities to empower their own local environments to do community environmental stewardship projects along community transportation corridors. So part of the process that Dave and many other wonderful volunteers here in your community of Fairfield have undergone is that of kind of an inventory and assessment of the needs here in the Fairfield area. Out of those needs, the Visioning Committee, prioritized several areas with which we wanted to develop conceptual plans for the community. And what we're here today to share with you are those conceptual plans. Please keep in mind that they are just that. They are thinking tools of what the possibilities may be for the community, and that just because there's something that we're showing as a possibility here, and though it might be a recommendation on behalf of us, the professional group that's working with the Visioning Committee and the Visioning Committee, that it doesn't necessarily mean that these specific things will go in the ground. The idea is to simply encourage the continued beautification and enhancement that has gone on here in the community of Fairfield through transportation related projects. We'd like to start today by thinking about something that is a little bit intangible currently, though I think will become more and more prevalent in the community in the coming years, that being the bypass of Highway 34 around the south of the community. The Visioning Committee felt that this bypass of Highway 34 will be a very significant feature, of course, not only visually but also economically to the community, and chose it as probably their highest priority for conceptual design areas that we may improve the community through landscape scale enhancements. So here what we're showing are a series of image edits. As we go throughout this little presentation, we'll be showing you a series of image edits of the various projects that the committee is hoping to work on here in Fairfield. We're just starting here with what we're referring to as the South Entryway treatment. This will be the intersection of current Highway 1 south of Fairfield, just a little bit past the Casey's on the south side of town, with what will become the Highway 34 bypass. And here's a rendition of what that area will look like from the air, this being Highway 1 and Highway 34 intersecting it from the east to west. And here in this conceptual photograph, this is a picture of that area as it existed this spring. And This is a possibility of what it may look like soon after the bypass. We're proposing some wildflower plantings, some plantings of native prairie grasses and wildflowers between the road and a bike path going up into the community of Fairfield, along with some street tree plantings. And in time, it may be possible that the community may be able to develop a boulevard through Highway 1 going up into the community that may be able to be landscaped with native shrubs and trees, ornamental trees, to be enjoyed visually by people that are coming and going to the community. This overall concept plan here at the top of the page that we've referred to already indicates a potential trailhead for the series of trails that will be adjacent to, by trails we're referring to bike and walking path trails that will be installed along the Highway 34 bypass. But the possibility exists that there may be a trailhead featuring the Louden barns here just south of the community. And then we're also showing some different shadings here featuring different types of prairie plantings, short grass prairie plantings and some tall grass prairie plantings with different species and colors and interests, so that they're beautiful throughout the growing season, and that they will provide some interest and something different for the motorist that's traveling along Highway 34 to stop and think, oh, well, we'd like to stop and visit this community. They put a lot of emphasis and pride on their community, and there's something here that's neat that we'd like to get off and take a look at. Dave, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this?
Thank you, Mark. I think one of the things that most folks are aware of, but we just like to reemphasize, is part of the Jefferson County Trail Council. Trails are already completed from the Walton Road all the way north to B Street, and B Street all the way over to Gear. And this will be the southern section, and this is part of the DOT's, at DOT's expense. They will be paying for all this trail that will cover from Highway 34 west to the south entry that we just discussed, and then we'll carry over to Park Street, which there will be a road that will allow the bike path to come in there, and then through the wetlands area to Chautauqua Park, and make a 17-mile trail loop for pedestrian, bicycle, walking, jogging. And so this will be a real a key piece for people coming into the community and being able to see this and know there's a trailhead right there to be able to access this.
It'll be a wonderful addition to the community. We'll grab a different concept plan here.
And the next is a little bit more information about the south entry street.
On the south entry, as Dave indicated, this is a further detail of some of the proposed ideas for that south entry off of Highway 34 onto Highway 1 going north into the community. Here, this aerial image, though it's a little bit I don't know, a little detailed and very, it has the look of a blueprint. It's a very professional type of drawing, indicates the possibilities of these median plantings that we referred to, both on the south side of the proposed Highway 34 bypass and the north side coming into the community of Fairfield. A more visual representation of that in cross-section here would be this. This would be Highway 1 as you're traveling to or from town proper. Some ornamental lighting with decorative banners in addition to that planting median here. And along the roadside ditch between the trails on either side of Highway 1 would be plantings of native prairie grasses and wildflowers as well. And this is a representation of what it might look like from the air. Not only do we show again that landscape median, the native grass and wildflower plantings throughout the trail on both sides of Highway 1, and some accent trees kind of scattered along the border for varied interest and color to kind of draw one's eye and define that edge a little bit further. But a neat feature here at the intersection that would go to that potential trailhead would be an accent native planting of prairie grasses and wildflowers in a more geometric or formalized design that would really stand out to the eye. Would really provide a lot of attention and accent to that intersection and make a statement about that particular area. Dave?
One of the requirements on any of these developments is that the DOT, if they're going to help with the funding, that they do want to have the native prairie grasses and flowers and forbs. So we've already had a sampling of this at the entryway sign, Highway 34 west of town, and so this will help further accent this as we look forward to more of the restoration coming forward.
Okay.
Next are different alternative treatments, and once again we're looking at what the east, the south, as well as the west entryway on this.
As Dave was referring to, again, this is, you can really tell that the possibilities that Highway 34 will present to the community are very prominent in the minds of the visioning committee members, as we spent a lot of thought and energy in developing these ideas for the community entryways off of these interchanges. Here closest to me is the conceptual design for the west entryway. This horizontal line right here would be what is currently Highway 34 as it enters into town from the west. Traveling from the west east, you'd enter town over off here to the right. As the bypass is proposed, it's actually going to be curving. If where my finger is going is the current line of Highway 34, it will be kind of coming up in order to cross the railroad tracks and then swooping down to the southeast, where it will then go around the community to the south. So here at this interchange, and the DOT feels very strongly that this will be a primary interchange for industrial and commercial traffic in the community, and will provide a wonderful gateway to the community's business and industry corridor there on the west side of town. What we're proposing is border plantings along the outside of those areas along the interchange of native shrubs and native trees. And inside that, some native grass and wildflower plantings illustrated by the green. And then in the triangles of the interchange, the possibilities to do some drifts of various colors of native grasses and wildflowers would really provide a lot of focus and attention to that interchange. As you're traveling through the rural countryside, we tend to just kind of zone out a little bit and see major landscape features, but something as prominent and different as what we're proposing here would really cause someone to stop and take a moment to enjoy the beauty that will be afforded here at the community entryway. And then also a colonnade of trees, some mixed plantings, if you will, of trees as you enter what will become the old Highway 34 into the community. That's the west entryway. The concepts for the south entryway as well as the east entryway are very similar in terms of their plant materials. The idea is to generate a theme, if you will, so that just as I often use Pella as an example of a community, when you arrive in the community of Pella, you know that there's something different about the community based upon their architecture and their closeness with their Dutch heritage. It's very prominent that you've arrived in some place that takes great pride in what they have locally, and that's especially prevalent in Pella around tulip time in the spring. Well, here we're really trying to achieve a similar effect throughout the year from a landscape scale perspective, with the proposition of utilizing these native trees, grasses, and wildflowers prominently at the interchanges of the community. So here you can see at the east entryway, as you're coming into Fairfield presently on Highway 34 from the east, the highway will take a turn to the southwest, and again we're kind of looking at a similar scheme, a similar theme, if you will, with the border of native shrubs, accent prairie grasses, and then in the interchange some high concentrations of native grasses and wildflowers with drifts of color to really provide interest and variation. Again, off of the interchange there'll be a colonnade of trees pulling you off into slower speed limit, a more defined community, if you will, as you get into town proper. The same is true, we've already looked at the south entryway of Highway 1 and what will become new Highway 34, the border plantings of native shrubs, the tall grass prairie plants, the drifts of color in the wildflowers, and then some clustering of shrubs to add a lot of interest and accent to the actual physical center of those interchanges.
Very good.
We're just talking a little bit about the east and west entryways, and here what we're showing are image edits of what the community entryway on old Highway 34, the present Highway 34, what will become an old stretch of road in time, might look like after you've gotten off that interchange. The possibility of relocating or developing another community identification sign of Fairfield here with very similar plantings to what you have at the current community entry sign that sits up on this hill, which is a wonderful sign and a great location with a wonderful plantings around it. Unfortunately, it's about a mile from here to there, and as you get off Highway 34, it'll be some time before you'd come in contact with a sign like this. So one of the things that the committee talked about was either relocating or developing another sign placed a little bit farther outside the community to provide a little bit more identification. And then we're showing again similar native prairie grasses and wildflower plantings around it, as well as some clusterings of native trees and shrubs to provide an alley or a corridor effect that really focuses your attention towards the entryway to the community as you're coming in from the west. Here's the view of that as it existed this spring, and this is a little bit different what we're proposing with the entryway sign and some large mature overstory trees. On the east community entryway, as you get off Highway 34, again having the location of a community monument or identifier sign, similar plantings as you saw on the west side, and since this is in a very neat and well-kept area, we weren't proposing to do much with this area as it's very scenic presently. It has a nice backdrop of trees as you can see, but perhaps the addition of some complementary plantings on the south side of the current Highway 34. So those are just a couple of concepts, some thinking tools to think of what those areas might look like in a few years with the help of this visioning community and the hard work of the community as well.
The current entryway signs, as people may remember, the one to the east is placed in Chautauqua Park, and this was a gift from the Ragbri Committee. When Ragbri last came through Fairfield, donations or funding came back from the Des Moines Register, and the local committee felt that this was a strong enough project that everyone would benefit from placing a sign in Chautauqua Park. The one to the west was a donation from the Fairfield Manufacturing Association, and they were the ones that provided that and helped with the dedication. At the time, of course, we didn't even know if the bypass was going to go north-south or if there was going to be one. So instead of trying to wait and anticipate, we went ahead and placed them as best we could. And if they can be moved, if we do this, that can happen. But if we decide there are additional signage, we'll move forward with that also. But we'll take all these ideas, once again, the concepts under consideration, and then come back. And one of the other things that we did, in fact, at the band concert about 3 weeks ago, we did a survey, and I think there were 75, 78 surveys turned in. And this evening, when we have our internal meeting, we will learn more of the results of those surveys. So maybe some of these questions will be answered from the citizens of the community.
Indeed. Another idea that the committee looked at when thinking about the proposed bypass of the community is the possibility of doing something a little bit unique, something different with the actual infrastructure of the interstate highway that will be coming along. The possibility exists to do something in the way of textured concrete on the bridges that will be at these interchange bypasses that we've previously looked at. Though these ideas are a little bit architectural, and the possibilities do exist that we may be able to do something very feasible in the community in terms of texturing, coloring of concrete, or even the possibility exists that they may be painted so that they don't look exactly like bridges that you will see in other communities surrounding, such as Mount Pleasant or Oskaloosa. Or the idea is that by having a unique identity, it will help provide a little bit of identification with the community of Fairfield, in addition to those native grasses and wildflower plantings that will hopefully be going in the ground.
At our previous meeting, we discussed this in more detail, and it's prime time for us to do this, because even though we're looking at 2007 as the current time frame for the completion of this, these are details that need to be included here in 2003, 4 years in advance, and we still have that threshold of opportunity to provide the recommendations for the texture and coloring that Mark has discussed. If we waited another year, that window of opportunity would be past us. So we feel very fortunate that we can have that input to the DOT.
Mm-hmm. We'll move right along and actually get a little bit beyond something that deals with the proposed bypass. One of the other concepts that the committee wanted to focus some attention on was the area of the Heritage Plaza. Not that the sign or the brickwork or anything necessarily at the plaza was bad, but perhaps the possibility existed through this process to augment, to supplement, and enhance that area, to provide, as you can see from the image that was taken this spring, that sign gets a little bit lost in there in the shade of that wonderful tree, but primarily in the backdrops of the backs of the downtown buildings, and also the adjacent parking lot at the city. So the landscape architect that's working with us from Shive-Hattery went out there with his tape measure and started measuring a few things off and counted the number of parking spaces in that parking lot. Some of the objectives that we had for this area were to screen the parking lot from view, to screen the backs of the downtown buildings, yet while retaining a significant number of parking spaces and adding some beautification to that area, supplementing the wonderful work that's already been done on behalf of the community. And as you can see in this conceptual image edit, with the addition of some decorative lighting, with some banners consistent with the rest of the community, and the addition of an extra 10 feet, I believe, of planting space where the current pedestrian sidewalk exists, the opportunity for some beautiful plantings of ornamental trees and some shrubs and some beautiful flowers exists in that area, really to draw your attention more towards the sign and detract you from the parking lot and the backs of the businesses of the downtown area. And actually, by changing, this is a view looking down onto the Heritage Plaza and parking lot currently, to change from angle parking to straight parking here, I believe no actual parking spaces would be lost, and would continue to help facilitate the addition of this planting area and accomplish all of the objectives of screening the backs of the buildings and drawing the attention to that community sign as well.
Just like the sign says, welcome, we're glad to have you here, but we do the plantings and your arms come out and say, welcome, it's nice to have you come in town.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives you a warmer, a closer feeling to this whole Heritage Plaza area.
It'd be a wonderful asset to the downtown area, especially with all of the other work that will be going in along the square on behalf of the local beautification committee. Our second to last board to share with you here this afternoon is that of the North Trail Crossing, the trail crossing of the current trail at Pleasant Plain Road. And the committee, in addition to the city as well as the county engineer, identified a need or a concern rather for the safety of the pedestrians and the bikes crossing Pleasant Plain Road at this trail crossing. So a couple of the ideas that the committee came up with, though they would be rather expensive and probably somewhat impractical at this time, would be the addition of perhaps a tunnel going under the road, which would solve any traffic or hazard problems, pedestrian conflicts with motor vehicles. As you can see here, from the current view to a proposed view of the tunnel going under the road, with some accents of prairie grasses and wildflowers there as well. But also the addition or the identification of the area. This would be the opposite view of that from that same parking lot looking towards the trail. Just kind of sprucing up the area, beautifying the area with the addition of native grasses and wildflowers again, and perhaps some additional signage identifying the trail, the route of the trail, etc. But I believe that the committee realizes at this point in time the cost associated with the possibilities that have been identified with putting a trail underneath the road would probably prevent it from actually becoming implemented. But we wanted to show it simply as a possibility, something to think about, and hopefully through the efforts of the committee, one way or the other, whether it's through signage or pavement markings or something, that intersection at the trail and Pleasant Plain Road will become much safer for motorists as well as the pedestrians as well.
Most people realize that by the time the cars are coming past, they're at the 55 mile an hour or plus speed, and yes, people do need to look, they do need to check both ways, but this would provide an alternative, and as Mark shared with us, the expense may just be prohibitive, but the other design and the other upgrades as far as the prairie grass and the flowers would definitely soften and welcome more people to use that parking area as a trailhead to head around the city reservoir.
And the last concept board that Dave and I brought to share with you this afternoon is that of Waterworks Park and the possibility of beautifying that area more so than it already is. Dave and I both enjoy that area quite a bit and find it to be attractive. However, as you can see from some of the image that was taken this spring, with the addition of some screening plantings, the service buildings in the back would not have to be seen. The addition of native grasses, wildflowers, some ornamental trees would add a lot of body to that entryway at Waterworks Park and provide some wonderful habitat for butterflies and birds. That would be a wonderful nature or wildlife viewing area in there, and could really add a lot of value to a wonderful park system that you already have. Things of this nature, I think that the committee sees as possible throughout the community of Fairfield. They just wanted to utilize the possibility at Waterworks Park as an example of what can be done in so many areas throughout the community. The areas don't have to necessarily have kind of that prairie or taller or more wrangly look. They can be done in a more formalized planting, but that area is so natural and naturalized, it would look beautiful either way. Do you have anything to add to this board, Dave?
I think one of the things that many people may know, or if they don't, we'll share at this time, that on the other side, on the east side of Waterworks #1 Pond, is one of the few remaining native prairie areas in the community. There's been identified 6 or 10, and this would be one of the largest ones. So this would just augment or help provide that much more knowledge for people to be able to access and see this. It does get a lot of use, and especially now with the Jordan Well being used as our primary source, the recreation area of this nice piece of body of water is going to get more usage with your canoes and other watercraft that can be there. So I think we'll even see more traffic than there is. This is one of our highlights in the fall. The Fairfield Cross Country teams host an invitational meet where they have up to 18 teams that come in and use this area, and this would just help beautify it even more. One thing we will have to watch, I did have a call from one of the coaches immediately following the newspaper article about it, that we make sure we don't, on part of the plantings, that we don't put trees in the middle of where their cross-country course goes. So I assured him that before trees go on the ground, he would have a chance to walk it and make sure that we're not causing a barrier or a hurdle. It's not a steeplechase, kids. It's a cross-country race. So
excellent.
We are very fortunate to have the services of Mark from the Trees Forever. This is the funding organization that I've been working with for the last 12 years. We pumped more than $80,000 worth of tree planting materials into the Fairfield community. Through their help, through Alliant Utilities is the primary funding mechanism. Lauren Hoffman is the gentleman that works with Shive-Hattery, the landscape architects from Cedar Rapids. Colleen Rafferty is one of the interns from Iowa State, and Ted Theodore Wilger is also an intern from Iowa State University. And so we owe a deep gratitude, a thanks to them. The funding for this study has once again come from the DOT Living Roadway Trust Funds. And so many times people say, what are our tax dollars doing? We feel that this vision for the future of Fairfield, the beautification committee, everything is moving forward in a positive manner, and it will be done in a proper order as opposed to a last-minute decision.
Mm-hmm. It's through the work of volunteer groups such as the local Fairfield Visioning community committee that make your community such a wonderful and excellent place to live and to work. Through their efforts and hopefully the efforts of many of you that might be willing to join them in these plantings and beautification efforts, your community will be that much better and be that much more inviting for so many others to visit and to work and live. So thank you all for your time today, and I think we're pretty well wrapped up.
Currently these are on display in City Hall. Hopefully we can set them out maybe in the banks for more personal up-close viewing of the public, and we'll move forward and keep you posted as we make additional steps in this direction. And thank you very much for letting us share some time with you today.
Thank you.